of the planets. Matter of fact, it was beyond. They have a natural level of how these things from the ecliptic that each one of them has as they go around the sun. Pluto was like twice to 3 times that above the regular planetary ecliptic. So you began looking at it and you had to say this bizarre erratic behavior indicates that it's something other than a planet. So science for the last 2 decades has been going through a massive debate over A, what is a planet? And B, if that is true, how does Pluto fit into this? And finally, about a year ago, they came up with finally defining what a planet was, and they finally decided that this eccentric orbit proved that it was a former moon that had become a planet. So when I was a kid and I was told about what Pluto's history was, and now I suddenly saw them beginning to understand it, because it's a former moon of Neptune that was brought out when we had these galactic wars millions of years ago and through the solar system, which caused all kinds of crazy things. Like Uranus is the only planet. It's actually lying on its poles.
Okay.
And we have this huge asteroid belt.
Right.
And for some strange reason, 2 other water planets, Venus has suddenly become cloud covered, and it's the hottest thing around. It's like that side hotter than a pizza oven. And you suddenly have on the other end Mars being this massive disaster. It's just got a little more atmosphere supposedly than the moon. And the moon does have a very small atmosphere, and that's one of the things they also tried in NASA to hide from us. So the moon also, let's just talk about our moon instead of Pluto for a second. The moon is so eccentric in what it is, you begin to realize there's got to be something different than what they're talking about. When the Apollo people went up and they did seismology on the moon, it rang like a bell. And when they checked out what the ringing would mean as far as the metal, they came up with the concept that it was a titanium shell. Now, nature does not develop titanium shells.
Okay.
Titanium shells are developed in only one way, and that's you take titanium and you smelt it in a very high temperature electric furnace. So nature usually does not use high temperature electric furnaces and make exact perfect super large titanium shells of a sphere that is about 3/4 the size of the present moon. This is enormous for a shell. It would be considered on our planet technologically impossible because of the major amount of technology involved in it.
Yum, yum, yum. I love it when the conversation and the subject matter is just so rich with meaning and significance. And so it is with this conversation with Sheldan Nidle, author of Your First Contact. Sheldan was just opening up this huge universe of worms to talk about our solar system, and I want him to go on. Sheldan, tell us about the planets, and you mentioned Uranus, or was it Neptune being on its side?
It's Uranus.
Yeah, Uranus, okay, on its side. But talk a little bit, give us a quick overview of our planets and their history that we don't know about.
Well, we have to understand that we're a unique solar system. We have 4 water planets, at least we had 4 water planets. Mars is now a remnant of what it once was. The amount of water on it, NASA scientists are finally beginning to collaborate with one another and are confirming what I'm talking about. They think there's a vast ocean of water underneath the surface of Mars, that somehow underneath the surface of the planet, the terrain, and
subterranean now.
It's subterranean oceans they're expecting to find there. And they're also expecting that this happened when the atmosphere suddenly went away. And they can't understand what that's all about. They just come up with a concept that the gravity of Mars was not sufficient to maintain the oceans and the water and then the proper atmosphere, very similar to one we have right now.
So it just drifted off into space, is that it?
Right, that's the concept. But to me, if you look at the mechanics of it, if it existed there for billions of years, and all of a sudden it drifts off for no strange reason, some strange reason, into space. This is very odd. There must have been something that happened.
Sure.
And what I've constantly been told since I was a kid was that there were these galactic wars that went back and forth, and they involved our solar system. And one of the things that happened was there was originally colonies of the Galactic Federation that were on Mars, on Venus, as well as on Earth. And then what happened was Venus was attacked, and the result was the present condition that it has.
The inferno that it is
the
now.
inferno. And what we have to understand is one of the ways that people date things in science is by using a uniform concept of half-lives, which radioactive half-lives. And of course, one of the things that science is beginning to discover is that half-lives are not uniform. They're actually create situations where it becomes almost impossible to date things properly. And there's a giant argument going on now whether carbon-14 dating is really that accurate. So there's a war going on behind the scenes, so to speak, because the National Science Foundation and a lot of other groups will not permit this stuff to get beyond into the public except in a very indirect way. In other words, people say certain things, or I've read articles on the internet from various people talking, that I've talked to a few scientists about what's going on, and that's about it. So we have to realize when you get rid of the non-uniform half-life theory of figuring out aging of different objects, whether it's planets or something as simple as the rocks on a planet, or et cetera, objects, let's say, we then have to start saying that the time factors are different. So when I have my time factors, I look at mine as being as accurate as them. So when I say that this stuff happened about roughly 1 million years ago, and they tell me that it was billions of years ago that Mars lost its atmosphere and oceans, I just say, well, you're going to get there right now. But
Okay, so the current story about Mars is that they're thinking this happened billions of years ago, and, and you're saying it's about 1 million years ago.
Right.
And essentially in time, we anticipate, or you anticipate, that their understanding will come up to the point where they'll interpret it as about 1 million years ago, too.
Right.
I see. Okay.
And they also look at the moon, and they see the moon primarily as crater activity from meteors hitting them.
Right.
And I look at it differently. I look at it as, because originally the moon was not our moon, which right away breaks the whole theory they've been trying to maintain. I call it the fiction of the creation of planet Earth. What it is, it's an artificial satellite.
Okay.
Of immense proportions and of an advanced technology which allowed it to have an atmosphere and seas. When the Romans came up with the concept of mares, and then it was applied by the medieval astronomers, and they gave it Latin names because that was the big thing in the Middle Ages about anything, was to give things Latin names. They really were oceans. They were really intuitively and saying that was the right thing. But it happened differently. The very straight striations that you see across the planet are from melting rock from these vast weaponry hitting them.
Oh, they're scrapings or something like... Yeah, okay.
And that got rid of most of the atmosphere. And these huge, strange-looking plastic craters that they see are not from huge asteroids hitting them. It's from these monstrous beam weapons hitting the planet.
Okay.
Actually, the moon. And the same thing happens with Mars. A lot of these mons or volcanic mountains are really not created by volcanism over a long period of time. It's remnants, once again, of these blasts which destroyed the atmosphere and the water, the ocean.
You're right. The moon's shape is very spherical. I mean, it's perfect. And also its orbit. Yes, it goes around, but it always is facing the Earth.
Right.
That's interesting. We never see the other side for some reason. Is that a natural occurrence, or was this...
It's very unusual.
Was it placed there for some reason?
It's just how it was placed there, because I have a whole different theory that I was told, history, about what and how this happened, because originally we had 2 natural moons.
All right.
And the first moon was used by the Atlanteans to destroy Lemuria, and then it needed to be replaced. So they took this moon, which was the remnant of the attack of the asteroid belt planet, which was a huge planet, roughly about 3.5 times the size of Earth.
The planet is referred to as Maldek.
It was the largest of all the water planets. And so what happened was it was blown out into space. So it was in kind of a Mars-Earth orbit. It was kind of an artificial planet, you might say, of the sun. And it was used to become the second moon, the first artificial moon, but the second moon of our planet, because we had 2 moons. One was destroyed. Then the second one was destroyed when the Atlanteans tried to do it again, this time to try to destroy people who they had exiled in Europe and felt that these people had come to a point to be a threat to them. And of course, they understood what was happening, and it broke up and was used to destroy Atlantis. And at the same time you give the times for destroying Atlantis, they've discovered there are, quote unquote, a vast field of asteroid hits extending from roughly below Florida all the way out in like an angle, we could expect a shot from from there all the way to Washington State and beyond into Canada.
Okay, this is like shotgun residue